from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. I'm very pleased today to have with me Aviv with me on the show. Aviv, the way I like to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, to give us a little bit about their background and what they do. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for having me. So I come from a very geeky, hands-on background. I learned how to code when I was 9 years old, I think. And ever since, I've been enamored with computers and making them do what I want them to do, which during my high school was mainly hacking stuff because I thought if you if you really know and understand things, you have to learn exactly how they work and and then you know how to break them and how to fix them back. So I did all sorts of hacking stuff what a teenage might do. And ever since then, my career was less about cyber and mainly about what really made me tick was delivering value. At some point early on, I stopped caring about specific technology and cared more about what the tech I'm building actually does, which led me to do some freelance coding over the years, where I was like, in 1 year, I worked on like 13 different programming language, for example. Um, I did CTO as a service for a while, and for the past few years, I'm mainly advising tech executives about how to create teams that triple impact per engineer, teams that are career highlights. And that's like my passion. I created a role around me really caring about creating teams where the CTO isn't the geek responsible of making people type on the keyboard faster, but people who are proud of leading teams who achieve amazing stuff. That's my passion and my mission.
That's great to hear that, Aviv. And, when I was preparing, I've seen you have a very rich career also as well, and a lot of things to us to discuss. I want also to highlight that you have released also your second book, right? Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it
S-
came out a few months ago.
Great. So there are a couple of things which, when I saw it attracted uh, my attention, honestly. And I think it's a debatable thing in tech, but from your side and from your experience, I want to hear from you, especially because you mentioned you work as a fractional CTO and you manage teams and you had to hire team also as well. So the place that I want to start is this concept that you have about the growth mindsets versus experience. If you can elaborate on the importance, of how it's better to
Yeah.
interview candidates with the grow mindset, and how much is this different from the hiring practices that mainly, as we know, they focus on experience, and which honestly, the experience thing, of course, it's important, um, but again, it's not nowadays the number one thing that you have to look at. So I want to understand this concept more from you, Avi.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I think pretty much everyone listening right now knows how experience filtering works in interviews, right? You have a set years of experience that you want as one of the requirements on the job description. You you mainly look for people who are already senior or have been doing this for a while, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fine. I get that because the reason we do that is that it's an easy way to gain a bit more confidence in the decision to hire someone, which is a big decision anytime. Even if you're already hiring, employee number 100 or 1000, we still care about making the right decisions. And I get that. And it's fine to do that even for most of your employees. But I find that with a lot of companies, once you have a good basic team in place, you actually can gain so much from not just bringing in those experienced people, but by intentionally saying, I want to bring in some people who are still in the molding process. They haven't fixed their ways of operating yet. And these, it's a bit like consider a healthy investment portfolio. If you're not too risk crazy, what you're going to do is invest in a few solid things. So the majority of your portfolio is safe, which are the people who you have track records of seniority and experience, and that's fine. But also, you should also get some investments that are with a bigger risk, but also with great potential. And these are the unexperienced people or less experienced people I want to see more companies hiring and investing in them, helping them grow. And when we do that, for example, we look in the interviews for people who are not experienced, or maybe they have experience in one role and now this is the first time for them looking into something else. And I always look for the growth mindset, which is a concept of, not mine, something you can read or many, many books about. It's a psychology concept. It says that you want to see people who don't um, localize their issues, and don't think that if something, for example, failed, it's always going to fail. Like, did you do that? No, it failed, and I don't think that's a good idea. Growth mindset is about the opposite of those people who have that sort of innate optimism, and it doesn't have to be innate. You can learn it with time, but it's about, did you try something and what did you learn from it? And what we want to see to detect growth mindset is that when something failed, they don't say, yeah, I just can't do that, or that's impossible. Or we want to see those people who believe that maybe, even though it failed, maybe there's still a way to get it done. Or if there's something I haven't done yet, I can see how I can get there. So just for example, I might talk to someone who is an engineer and is looking to get into a different role or different type of role in their career. And I might ask them, for example, what do they think it would take to be a marketing manager at the company, even if they're not looking to get into marketing? And the reason I ask that is that I want to see if they can imagine themselves turning into managers in in an area that's completely foreign to them. And I want to see if they can even imagine it and how they would approach it. And if they can see themselves doing that, then I know that they probably have a better growth mindset than many people. When I was younger, I used to think that, as a geek, I can do anything that's related to business. But I learned that pretty much anyone can learn to do anything. You might not be the best in the world at it, but I genuinely do believe that if we want, we can learn. And then, given our growth mindset, we can really become good at so many different things. That's how you see, by the way, lately, a lot of people who are technical, who are CTOs, who turned into CEOs, for example. And this is something that is possible once you have this growth mindset and you stop pigeonholing yourself to a very strict path. And this is something that's amazing because if you bring a few juniors who have this growth mindset, you're getting people who are usually cheaper, usually very, very energetic and motivated. And you can also help in their molding. So they don't have to become accustomed to how you do things, but they actually grow in your company. And the way you do things is the natural way for them. So they become amazingly effective. And yes, it's a bet because you have to work on it. But if you do it successfully, these tend to compound with time and you get more and more of these successes. And I feel like it's like magic. In a company that has more than a dozen or so people who are senior, starting to bring on these people every once in a while can do wonders and really make the team more agile, more fresh, and maintain a beginner's mindset. And this is like magic for some companies who feel like that they are growing and becoming, heavier. Let's put it that way, when like the big tech sort of teams I sometimes see.
Absolutely. And actually, one of my guests that I interviewed, he mentioned in his book something very similar, that after the team grew over certain number of people who can handle, at least, there are some senior people there. So, Zach Redner, the CTO of Yambo, and I'm say hi to him
Mhm.
from this episode. So he mentioned in the book that he wrote, Growing Fast, about how he hired someone even from non-technical background to be into a software engineer, just because he saw exactly what you mentioned. He saw this you know
The
let's
spark.
say, not only the spark, like he said, like, this is someone I know that they would do whatever it takes to prove themselves that yes, I can do this. They, even if they do something wrong, they know, okay, it's about the growth mindset that you talked about, Aviv. And it's all, the growth mindset
Mhm.
is all about, yeah, it's you say, for example, I can't do it yet, right? I failed here,
Yeah.
but I learned from my mistake. I will not repeat it again. So this is, of course, as you said, there are a lot of books, resources about the growth mindset, but it resonated, what you mentioned now with that real life example, I would say. Now, one of the other things which also attracted me, although, by the way, just for the sake of transparency, I never work as a CTO. I work with CTOs, and I was in the technology department, I would say. So more or less, I know how CTOs, CIOs, they think, but especially because
Mhm.
I know this is related to tech companies. And I've seen it all because I work also with tech companies, and we were used to see, uh, this story of every year they used to have one hackathon where they bring everyone to try to do the next big thing. And you advocate that in order to make innovation and creativity, you need to make this as a habit. So how is it? And someone might say, but Aviv, like, we don't have time to always do these kinds of activities. Like, we need the team to be focused on, this project. We have a big release coming out. We cannot do something like hackathon let's say, every month. So what's your take on this? I'm very interested in knowing the answer.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, I think that hackathons are probably better than nothing. And most companies have a hackathon or two a year. But what they end up doing once you do these for a year or two is that they become cages of creativity. You're essentially telling your brilliant people that you spent so much effort and so much money bringing in, hiring, training, you're telling them, hey, you can only be innovative, you can only be creative 1 day a year or 2 days a year. And I feel like that's just it makes no sense. And what I want to see is teams who bring in their creativity and novelty to the table every day. And it's hard to start with there because usually, as you said, everyone has a deadline and we need to get things out, we need to ship, we need to deliver. And how can you start taking all of these risks? And there's a bunch of stuff that I advise companies to do. And that I do with my clients to get creativity to the next stage. It starts usually with shifting from hackathons to, I call these intermissions. So think about 3, 4 times a year, we take not a day, or usually hackathons are not usually. Some startups do it during the night, the evening, which I think is terrible. We don't do those. And instead we take 3 to 4 to 5 days 3 to 4 times a year where the entire team works together and they do this sort of an intermission, which is an innovation week. We work on things that we feel might work. You don't do, the chores and the tasks and the tech debt, etc., because that's not innovation. That's just a bunch of small tasks you want to get to. But you do things that are really innovative, as in they might not work. We might spend 3 days on this and realize this isn't useful. That's what innovation means, right? If it's guaranteed to work, it's not really innovative. It's not an experiment. It's just another task. And if it's just another task, you can ask your boss to prioritize it. We're talking about real experiments. Sometimes this is just pure tech. I want to play with the new API OpenAI created. Maybe we can do something interesting with that. And sometimes it's, for example, internal tooling. I saw so many companies where the engineers sat with someone from customer success or from marketing or from sales and created a small dashboard or a tool or some automation that made the lives of other people in the company better. So this is a week where we try to amass tech capital, be it new technological capabilities, be it tech tools that make other people in the company better, and not about creating more features for our end users. That's one. And a couple of more things that can help with making innovation more habitual is, first of all, being okay with some failures from time to time, as in, I don't want teams to feel like if I didn't deliver 100% of the plan every quarter, I'm failing. And I see some companies that have that as sort of a track record. We deliver 100% of the roadmap quarter after quarter. And some people think that's a good thing. I think that's a bad thing because it usually means that we are buffering ourselves too much, that we are way too much into the safe zone. We're not taking any risks. I want to see us embracing some risks so that people will be a bit more innovative. So if I have a new task and I think, you know, this might be a good opportunity to try that thing. I don't want people to do it every time because that's gonna too slow. But if we have a bit of a buffer here, then we can start playing around with things from time to time and tinker, and that's where you get real creativity. And lastly, I really do believe that engineers, as much as we love, ask any engineers, they would all say they don't want any meetings. They want to talk to anyone. Most of them will tell you, just give me perfect product specs so I can just do the feature and I don't have to talk to anyone, and that would be amazing. And I get that because we feel like we just want to be productive and crank out code. But I do believe that if we connect them to the business, and we can put any software engineer on like a spectrum. On one end, we have those who are very technical. I don't care what the code does. I don't care about the company. I just want to program in Rust. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are product oriented, who would say, I'm willing to write assembly code on a mainframe because I care so much about what we are trying to achieve. And I'm always saying we need to push more people as a whole, not every single engineer, but more of them towards the product end of the spectrum. So they care about the impact and they don't try and create the perfect code, but they try to do things that actually reach some business results. And that's just a win-win-win for everyone around. But to get people more towards that end of the spectrum, what we need to do is actually have more friction or more vision for the engineers with the rest of the company and with the users. So as much as I tend to try and minimize meetings, for example, I would still want to make sure the engineers see what the users are saying, or sit in some user interviews or listen to a product or SIG every month or two. So I want them to really understand the product and understand the users and see what people are doing. And that's how you get those ideas for the intermissions, for example. So if I, as an engineer, understand what the marketing people are doing, I might have an idea for a marketing automation tool. And if I see what sales are doing, for example, I'll take a minute to tell you a real life story. I was working with a company that actually was working in real estate, a startup selling to real estate, and they were tracking down neighborhoods in big cities in the United States. And the engineer saw that the salespeople essentially just had a list of buildings and they would go building by building trying to sell their software. And one of the engineers said, give me 2 days and I'll try to do something. And he went off and created a small tool that basically took some open government data and open data from the internet and put all of that on a map. So they took everyone that they had under leads in the sales software, put it on a map and ranked it. So you can see where there are clusters, like neighborhoods where more buildings are more likely to be the sort of client you're looking for. And all of a sudden, the salespeople, their heads like exploded because they can go to specific neighborhoods and actually in one day get a lot more done and get more deals closed than they used to before. And this is not something they even could have thought about. But just because that engineer had enough friction with the salespeople to understand what they were doing, he had that idea. And that's the sort of innovation I'm looking for, right? Not everyone has to be Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but these things, small internal tools, can really add up to a bunch of superpowers for everyone in the company. And this is what we need to do and need to do more of.
That's great. But here's the question, Aviv, like, don't you think that leadership mentality need to change to because you might have someone on the team who's willing to do this, but if the leadership, you know, maybe some of them they are not convinced, so the voice of, you know, even the geeky one as we call them would not be heard. So how we can change actually the culture, let's say, to open the road for such, you know, you gave very nice example here, for someone even, you know, from a pure technical perspective, was able to understand the business requirement, and then he or she can go and they can do something about it and get solved. So how we can change the leadership mentality in your opinion?
Mhm. So this is actually something that I do a lot in my coaching one-on-one with people. When I work with CTOs or VPs of engineering, I help them what I call move upstream. I help them realize that they're not just the ones in charge of the geeks, but they are real executives in a company. And an executive has to understand the business, right? If you're a tech executive, usually you have the tech part really, really great, but the executing part, being an executive, is something that we need to learn. And that doesn't mean that you're just a glorified manager with a nice title. You have to genuinely become an executive, meaning moving upstream is making sure that you're in the room when there are discussions about the business, about the roadmap. You don't just wait to get the roadmap. Right now, we're speaking right now at the beginning of 2024. Some people are just going to be handed over the roadmap for 2024 and be told this is what you need to do. But a good executive is going to make sure that they are in the room as this roadmap is being formed. They help shape the strategy. And just by sitting in that room first, you're already going to learn a lot and pick up on the important stuff for the business. If you're going to speak up and ask questions, you're going to understand even more of that. And with time, if you're in the room and you're asking questions, you can also start making suggestions and shaping it. And this is something that I've seen people do with time, even if they're co-founders in a startup, but they're technical, all the way to people who are hired executives who never did any business work, but with time gained that confidence. And in the beginning of my second book, Capitalizing Your Technology, I talk about the importance of every company nowadays to realize that technology cannot be another tool. Technology needs to be something that's an integral part of your strategy. So you don't think about a strategy and then strap on the features you want your engineers to code, but you have to realize really what technology enables in your world and think about a strategy that encompasses that in a way that achieves maximal impact. And to do that properly, it means that you have to get your tech leaders involved in shaping the strategy. And if you have that understanding from the board and from the CEO that realizes we need to pull tech leaders into the discussion, and if you have the tech leaders realizing that they need to move upstream, not just be delivery executives trying to deliver what we're at, but actually take part in what's decided in the room up above. Once you have those two parts working together, then it clicks. But sometimes we have to work on one of these to make it work. Sometimes we have to work on both. But it is possible, and I've seen it a lot of times in many, many countries.
Absolutely. I remember back in, I think it was 2008, 2009, when I started to say, guys, we need, you know, we need our, because I was a junior guy at that time, you know, and I'm saying, you know, we need the technology leaders to sit in the board actually. It's not the board that needs to come and say what we need, because you know they used to see technology as, especially I'm talking in general of course, as a cost center, right? So we know this, like, oh,
Yeah.
these, yeah, these are the guys who keep sending us the expensive bills. And I was saying, yeah, but we need to change this. Unfortunately, it took long time, and still a lot of work need to happen here. But yeah, And this is also maybe why it's important for also, but to be fair, I mean, to be fair, I think there is a small percentage, I would say, of the formula is on us as technical people, because, and it's something maybe by culture, maybe something, I don't know. Like the geeky guys, the techie guys, they don't understand business, or they don't want to learn about business. And I think this is a big miss. And if I can go back in time, I would go, and as a technologist, like I would go learn about sales, marketing, use cases, finance, because this would help me from a technology perspective actually to make better products and to make it more appealing to customers, I would say. So, I like this approach, honestly. So 100% on this. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things also you talked about in addition to this, and this is again, it's an interesting one. So you mentioned in the book the concept of scaling out rather than scaling up for profitable R&D growth. I want to understand more about this concept and how it's different from, like the strategies that typically advocated by venture capitalists, right? So we know, like,
Yeah.
when you about the growth, the mind goes to the investors. So I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that up until like a year ago, when the zero interest rate policy stopped being a thing, most startups funded by venture capital essentially had one mode of operation. We take a bunch of money and we throw gobs and gobs of engineers at the problem. And essentially, half of the companies were in hypergrowth, and everyone had like 50% of their people just busy hiring more and more people. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense. This is like the scaling up sort of way where some people call their startup scale ups because they were just growing and growing. And that's, as we now see and has happened, that's a way to create profitable real businesses fast. That's a way of creating businesses that burn a lot of venture capital money fast. And it's also usually not how you get a lot of impact fast. Like, I have some examples that I love to think about. Like, WhatsApp, when they were sold to then Facebook, had about 13 engineers and over 100 million users. And this is think back to an age where you had to have two really native apps. You didn't have all the frameworks we have now. You didn't have AWS and all the cloud tools. And still they did that with about a dozen engineers. And the same, by the way, with Instagram, which had a similar number of engineers and tens of millions of users when they were acquired. Or even more recently, you look at Tesla and Elon Musk's operations and what he did right now. I don't think Elon Musk is a great manager in many respects, but one thing you gotta head to: the guy took Twitter from many thousands of engineers to less than 1,000, and the site is still running, right? And we're seeing new features. And I believe that this concept of just scaling up doesn't make sense. And contrast the dozen engineers working at WhatsApp and Instagram with tens of millions of users with the fact that nowadays any SaaS that does barely nothing, that has like a few database tables and some screens, has 20, 30, 40 engineers. And you're like, where's all the work going? And scaling out is the concept of, we realize that we want to work in smaller teams that are focused on business value. And we realize that the systems that we're building have to be systems that allow for profitable growth. So you can't have, if we try and make a graph of it, where as the business grows and the number of users grow, we have R&D grow in a way that's linear with it, because that means that you're always, assuming the business succeeds, you're always going to have to get more and more and more engineers in a rate that's not sustainable. What we want to do is create a system where R&D realizes that the most important thing for us is to ensure that if business really takes off, we are not the bottleneck. We never have to bring in 10 more engineers to make sure that the business can do what it needs to do. And then this is once you realize that we're not gonna scale up, but we're gonna scale out. We're gonna have this part of the system work really well, and then engineers are gonna move out and work on another part of it. Once you have that mindset, you build systems differently. You don't have the assumptions that we're always going to have a bunch of engineers to take care of this or that. You build systems that are more robust and that actually enable the business side of the company to be free of these sorts of stuff. So literally earlier today, I was talking to a CEO who told me, yeah, we're closing 7-figure deals, but all my team is just sucked into working on scale for all 2024, the way it seems right now. And I told them precisely this: you have to find a way to disconnect the number of engineers you have and the amount of work you have to put in with the scale of the business, because they need to realize we need to fix this, at least for the next order of magnitude of growth, and then be able to work on new stuff. You can't constantly be like, building another step as the business is growing. That's what you do maybe during the first year or so of a startup, but not when you're creating a real solid business that's growing.
Absolutely. I was on a call last year. Um, it was a VC pitch call, right? And
Mhm.
the question came, and some people they don't believe that you can sometimes do more with less. Uh, always
Exactly.
there's a misconception, I would say, that in order to make something really big, you need to have these big teams and all the skill sets that you can do it. Yeah, I believe once you become a big giant, maybe like, I don't know, just to mention names only, like Google, Meta, uh, you know the others, Microsoft. Yeah, maybe I think it would make sense, to have this large scale, as we call it,
Mhm.
R&D. But when you are a small startup, I believe you need also to think about how you spend your money, and you don't want to spend the money also in the wrong direction. And unfortunately, I've seen this couple of times where companies, they go, as you said, especially we saw it in before the pandemic and during the pandemic, when they start to hire a lot of people, putting them on some features, and then all of a sudden discovered we don't need that. And the story of Twitter, which is now called X, people thought literally,
Mhm.
and I was watching, oh, the site will stop, the app will stop. Helen is firing every single senior engineer there, so no one will be able to take care. There's no site reliability engineers, nothing. And at the end, still the platform, till the moment we are recording this episode, it's still working up and running, and they are shipping, I think.
Precisely.
Yeah, I think they are shipping every 2 weeks some new features or so. So they have big ambitions. Now,
Yeah.
the question that also come to mind when it comes also to do some kind of balance, because we're talking about the balance, right? So how, from a CTO perspective, and maybe it's also I know in some places it's the same person, like the CPO or chief product officer. So how we can make a balance between, you know, a hype that is outside, right? Done by something like AI. You mentioned a couple of minutes back, Open AI, and someone saw an API, which is cool. They want to try it. So how we can balance to make sure that actually we are integrating the right technologies at the right moments. I think this is something we didn't discuss much before, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it. So what's your take on this, Avi?
Yeah. So there are a few levels here of looking into new possible technology. First of all, there's like the smaller scale tech or the really, really bleeding edge stuff. So small scale as in as an engineer, I saw a new tool. I think it can save me some time. I think it can be nice. Um, in which cases I'm like, as an engineer, you should be able to make the case for why you think this makes sense. See, it's probably going to add X amount of hours or days to this big feature. And with product, your product counterpart have a real business discussion about what this might achieve and the cost of the extra time and get the time to do it. This is not easy, right? I'm saying something, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy because it means that engineering and product need to be able to speak to one another in a way that's collaborative and not adversarial. That's not always easy. But once you have that, the small stuff takes care of themselves. Then we have the bleeding edge stuff that no one knows if it's even going to work. OpenAI has something new and it just might be useless or very hard or whatever. Usually I try to have those happen during the intermissions. As I said, we have like every 3 to 4 months. And during these, engineers can have these almost a week of working on something and showing at the end of it something real to the world. Not not like a demo that you have after less than a day, like we have in hackathons, but you have a small sprint working on it. And then you can show it to product. You can show it to your managers and say, here is what I did in a week. And I think this makes sense, or realize it didn't work. And start thinking of new ideas for the next intermission. And that's level 2. And level 3 is the level of the executive leadership, where we look at the next year or 2 or 3, and we're saying, technology-wise, what's probably gonna happen, and do we need to have dedicated teams working on this? Maybe it's a research team, maybe it's the development team doing it as part of the product development right now, but considering things. So a year ago, people probably didn't have AI on the roadmap. Now, after 2023 is done and we have so many tools, I'm guessing more companies have AI as a real part of the roadmap because they realize some use cases for them. Another example would be, because I have clients in crypto, that there are different regulations that are probably coming up in crypto over the next year. And if that's the case, start thinking right now as a company, what do we need to do technology-wise right now so that when those regulatory changes happen, we're ready. We don't stop working for 3 months, but we actually have a solution ready. And that's like a tech decision based on your understanding of the strategy as a whole and of the market. So those are the level. The single engineer, the individual contributor, talking about a small tool, the team thinking about an idea at the level of the intermission to check it out and see if it makes sense. And then if it works out, sell it to product, for example. And then at the higher levels where we're talking about big technological shifts, where we are very business and market and world driven and not working from the inside about the technology we already have.
That's great. Now, as we are approaching the end, Aviv, what are your advices for someone who's interested to become in a leadership role like a CTO? So, anything from your experience, you can uh, give them a piece of advice. I would say, especially because things are changing very fast. So, what you can tell them?
Yeah. If you're looking to get a tech leadership, tech executive role, I can say that, first of all, what CEOs and co-founders and startups are looking for is someone who is not just waiting to be told what to do, not someone who's going to be a great executor of ideas, but someone who seems to take the initiative. So right now in your current role, and when you're interviewing, come up with ideas, but even in your current role, start coming up to those above you. And instead of, putting something on their plate, just say, hey, we need to think about this, we need to think about that. Do the opposite. Find something that you see that is a problem. Have an idea for how you can try and fix it and come up to them and, take it off their plate or suggest you do it. Say, I know that this is an issue. I have an idea. Let me take care of it. I just need, 2 weeks, or I need that guy for a week, or, something like that. Once you take that initiative, you really, for, yourself, you get the experience of taking the lead, being a real leader, not just another manager. And you will have a track record of things that will really make it easier for you to sell your leadership, to get the promotion or to get a new job as that role. And second, always, always, always think about the business. So right now, start talking to people in your company who are, in sales and marketing, customer success, really understand what they're doing, because I'm guessing you have the tech part nailed down. You don't need to be focusing too much on that. Yeah, AI changes. Okay, learn about that as you go along. But the thing you really need to do to get that next leap is open yourself up to the rest of the company, the rest of the world when it comes to business. And focusing on these two, like for your own personal growth in 2024, can really help enable you to become an effective tech executive.
That's a great advice, and I think we've covered a lot and great insights you give us today, Aviv. Final thing, I ask my guest where people can find more about you and about the book.
Yeah, sure. So I have a newsletter coming out for free every week at avivbenyosef.com. And on that website, you can also see my 2 books and links to my Twitter where I write something almost every day, etc.
Oh, that's great. I will make sure that the links are in the show notes. Well, Aviv, like really, it was an amazing, I would say, discussion with you. Thank you for all the insights. It's like I felt it's a master class condensed in a very short time, but I think what you mentioned are key components for success for both startups and scale ups as well, and even for any technology company. Um, and also I liked the way, especially at the end when you mentioned about you need to hire someone who can know how to do, which is back to the first question we started with, to know
Hmm.
what they can do by themselves. And this reminds me of what Steve Jobs, when he said we hire smart people to tell us what we should do, not to tell them what to do, which is obviously is the best leadership ever that we've seen. Again, like, agree or disagree with the guy, same what we talked about Elon Musk. We can agree or disagree with these guys, but at the end of the day,
Hmm.
they are example of leadership in technology. Aviv, thank you again very much for being here today. And the way I end my episodes is I like to thank the audience for your feedbacks, for your uh, messages that you keep sending me. And we are in this new season in 2024, and we are going to see different topics coming. We'll talk today, for example, about mainly RMD and the CTO role, and how the team should be handled. And we're gonna have a lot of topics around technology, startups, and entrepreneurship. So keep tuned about this. If you are first time listening to us, you can subscribe whatever podcasting app you use, and please tell your friends and colleagues about it. And I hope you are enjoying the content. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.